Welcome to episode 111 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. Today I'm interviewing Brad Mirman, whose most recent script, Forsaken, was recently produced and stars Kiefer and Donald Sutherland. We talk through his early career and then talk about this most recent project as well, so stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast, so they're very much appreciated. Over on iTunes, I want to thank Andrewer16, who left me a very nice review the last couple of weeks. Andrew, I really do appreciate that. Thank you for taking the time to leave a review. These iTunes reviews really are helpful. It helps to get the podcast listed in more places within the iTunes system, so it reaches a broader audience. Also, if you subscribe to the podcast, then you'll get the new episodes downloaded to your phone each week. So that's a nice, convenient way to stay current on the podcast. And from what I've heard, the number of subscribers also helps your rankings, again, within the iTunes system. So please do subscribe if you listen to this podcast regularly. I'm up to almost 50 reviews, so if you have a moment, please do take just take a moment and leave me a review in iTunes. You know, just a fair, honest assessment of the podcast is very much appreciated. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 111. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks, along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell your screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell your screenplay. Again, it's completely free. You just put in your email address and they'll get emailed to you. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So a quick few words about what I'm working on. So the big thing that I'm still working on is my Kickstarter campaign. It's been going on now for about 4 weeks. This episode that you're listening to right now is being released on February 15th, and my Kickstarter campaign ends tomorrow, Tuesday, February 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please, if you've thought about contributing but just haven't quite gotten around to it, this really is the last call. It's going to end tomorrow at 5 p.m. As I said, that's Tuesday, February 16th, 2016 at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. This is something that Kickstarter just makes you do. When you create the campaign, you put a hard end date. So there's no changing this. It's not going to be extended. There's not going to be any way of going past this time, this 5 p.m. Pacific time. It's going to be ending and cut off. As I've mentioned over the last couple of weeks, I keep adding more and more rewards. So there's a ton of rewards. Pretty much all the services that I sell through Selling Your Screenplay are available as a reward at a deeply discounted price. So if you want to go and check those out, definitely go have a look. Some of them have some restrictions on them in terms of how many I'm going to actually sell through that. But if you are interested in any of the Selling Your Screenplay services, definitely check that out. And again, if you just thought about contributing but just haven't quite gotten around to it yet, please do check it out, because tomorrow is the last day. Again, I'm just going to say that date one more time so it's real clear. If you're listening to this podcast, weeks or months or years in the future, you can kind of go back and get a feel for how it all unraveled. But today, as I said, as this is released, it's Monday, February 15th, 2016, and it's going to be ending tomorrow, Tuesday, February 16th at 5 p.m. So please go and check that out. Again, there's lots of new rewards. So even if you took a look at it at the beginning of the campaign, got a kind of a sense of what it was, I've probably tripled the number of rewards that are now offered since I first began. So please check it out again. So the other big thing I'm working on is the TV pilot. I've been talking about that over the last couple of weeks as well. I did finish up a first draft last Friday. I sent it off to my partner on the project, so I'm waiting to hear from him. I also am presenting the pages. It ended up being 27 pages for the pilot episode, and I've actually formatted. I've never written any TV, so I formatted it like a feature film. So I'm sure there's a lot of TV writers in this writers group, so I'll get some help from them in terms of act breaks and those types of there's some specific things for formatting a TV show that I don't really necessarily have a lot of experience with. So I'll hopefully get some of those notes tomorrow. But I'm presenting this to my writers group, and they'll give me a whole bunch of notes. So that will be interesting. The writers group, interestingly enough, is called Deadline Junkies, and that's actually the website. And I'll link to it in the show notes. It's deadlinejunkies.com. The Adam Strange is the guy who runs it and created the group, and he actually called it Deadline Junkies for this very reason, to really kind of force some deadlines on writers. And I've actually found over the years that it really does help. I am presenting this Tuesday, so, I really pushed to get those pages done. If I didn't have that deadline, I think I probably would have let it slip, at least for probably another week. I probably would have just spent some time polishing it and stuff. So it's good to have those deadlines. I highly recommend anybody who can join a writer's group and start presenting pages to other people. It's a great way to set a deadline. If you live in the LA area, it's Tuesday nights. Feel free to come out. There's no cost just to come out and audit the thing. You can come out and listen and give us notes. Listen to my pages and the other writers' pages and give us notes. It meets in, I think it's Sherman Oaks, right around where the 405 and the 101 cross. So in the San Fernando Valley, as I said, it's right on Ventura Boulevard, right around Van Nuys Boulevard. So it meets 7:30, 7:15-ish, 7:30 on Tuesday nights. Anybody's welcome. We're always looking for new writers. To learn more about it, again, just go to deadlinejunkies.com. I will link to that in the show notes. But even if you're not in the LA area, go to the website and check it out. You can kind of get a sense of how the writers group works, how it functions, and you might even be able to create one in your local area. It's a great resource and doesn't cost a lot of money, but it really builds a writers community. You get to know actors. We have actors come and read our pages, so I've gotten to know a lot of actors through it as well. So it's just a great resource. So I highly recommend it. Again, if you're in LA, perhaps you could check out ours. If you're not in LA, check out the website, and perhaps you could create one in your local area. Anyway, so that's what I'm working on. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm interviewing screenwriter and also director. He's also directed a few feature films, Brad Mirman. Here is the interview. Welcome, Brad, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So to start out, maybe you can just give us a quick overview of your background, kind of how you got into the entertainment industry and, got that first break.
Wow. I think I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I started writing when I was 13 and, bounced around doing other things. And it wasn't until like my mid-30s I thought one day that I should go and try to write a screenplay. I didn't want to wake up one day and, be the age I am now looking back and say, what if? So I wrote a couple screenplays. I was lucky. I optioned them. And then about 3 years into it, I wrote this screenplay called Partners in Crime, which ended up getting into a huge bidding war. And that was my big first script. And oddly enough, after all of that, they never made that movie. So.
Yeah. So what were you doing out of high school and between, you said you didn't start writing really till you're into your 30s. What were you doing professionally?
Well, as little as possible.
Okay.
I lived in Europe for a while. I was into music. I was really kind of bouncing around doing different things. I worked for my dad for a while. He's in the automotive business. But, I think those were all placeholders. No, I think it sounds hokey, but when you're kind of artistic or you have something in that, it's going to eventually find a way to come out. So I think, that was all leading up for me to eventually start writing.
Yeah. Okay, so you talk about these first couple scripts that you were able to option before you got this bidding war with Partners in Crime. Maybe you can just take us through some of the steps. So you've written a couple spec scripts. How did you go about actually getting them optioned? Did you cold call agents and managers? Did you send letters? Did you enter contests? What was your sort of first steps?
No, it's, being born and raised and growing up in L.A., and so you meet people who know somebody, so, you ask if you can get the script read or, and it goes in and a reader will read it and then somebody calls you in and, the business has changed a lot from when I started. I mean, it's not the same model anymore. It's actually much more difficult, I think, today than it was back then. And that's only economics because there was so much money flowing through the movie business back then. But it's just, getting read. That's the most important thing. If there's anything I would say to young writers, it's just get read, and if you're good, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to make it or find a way in, but the more, I think the one difference with me, I came up with a lot of writers. We all used to hang out at the Improv, and, when they would write a script and then while they were standing around having a beer waiting to get their rejection letters or whatever was coming from the studios or from the financiers, I'd be writing my next script. And when they were crying about not getting the movie made, I was already finished with my next script. And I just kept going on from project to project, back then, writing and writing. So I always had something going out. Well, if you don't like this one, but you like my writing, then I want to get back in there as quick as I can with a genre that you do like.
Yeah, yeah. So then you had these scripts, you started passing them out to acquaintances, friends, people in the industry. Did you get an agent first before you started to option these scripts, or were you able to option the scripts without an agent?
I was able to, boy, this is so long ago, I'm trying to remember. I'm pretty sure that I optioned the first couple ones without an agent, and that led me to get my first agent, which was with a writers and artist agency. So it was just, it's kind of like, it's very hard. I meet a lot of people and they've written one script or something, and then they say, how do I go about getting an agent? Well, unless it's a really damn good script, it's going to be tough, because agents are going to want to see that you're consistently a good writer. Because for a writer like me, for every produced movie that I've had produced, there's probably almost an equal amount of other movies that I've been hired to do rewrites on or polishes on or development deals on that went askew, that they just never made it through the pipeline. So if you're going to want to get into that world where you're getting development deals or you're getting hired to do rewrite work, then you have to have a body of work to show that you're capable of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's dig into Forsaken for a moment. That's your most recent film starring Kiefer Sutherland. Maybe you can give us a quick pitch or a log line for the film. It's really at its heart, even though we wanted to make a Western. I've known Kiefer for 20 years, and this is actually my third project with him. And it was actually Kiefer who wanted to do a Western and came to me and said, I think maybe a Western would be a good vehicle to do something with my dad, because up to this point, they've never shared screen time. Huh. So we started kicking around ideas and came up with this idea about characters are always interesting to me when they're at opposite ends. They're just a good fertile ground for conflict, which is, as they teach you when you're writing, which is where drama lies. So a gunslinger who came out of the Civil War and became a gunslinger, then comes back to this small town after being away for 10 years, and to his father, who's a Pentecostal reverend, that you're at polar extremes right away. So I was really attracted to that idea of going into the world and then doing the traditional Western, not the 1970s or 80s kind of Westerns, but more something that harkens back to the late 50s or early 60s, kind of Westerns. Mm-hmm. Maybe you could take us through your writing process, and maybe we can specifically talk to Forsaken, but if maybe the writing process on this is different than some of the other scripts, maybe you could kind of point out some of those differences. But just what does your writing process look like? How long does it take you to write a script? It sounds like you basically were spitballing ideas for this, and then once you kind of had a basic idea, how much time do you spend outlining versus writing the script? Really just your whole process would be interesting.
Yeah, my process is, I know a lot of other successful writers. We get together sometimes and we talk about our process, and they're as different as they can be. Mine's just kind of freeform now. I've never been. Anytime I've ever spoken at a film school or something about writing, you can read all the books you want in the world, but you've got to find your own voice, and you have to find your own way to get that voice and thoughts down. And at the end of the day, it's whatever works the best for you. For me, outlining. I can't write an outlining. I got hired to do a movie once for Simpson Bruckheimer years ago, and one part of the deal was they wanted an outline, and I told them I can't do an outline. It's just going to become a script. I can't stop at the process. I'm going to get a line of dialogue. It's going to lead to another line of dialogue, and and if that's a deal breaker, then that's a deal breaker. But so we went on the head with that. But for me, I don't outline that much. I get an idea. I make notes, I jot things down. I have my beginning, my middle, my end. I usually start to write. I write about 10 or 15 pages, and I start to get the voices of my main characters, and then I throw that away. And then I've thought about it so long. It's almost like giving birth while I write. And anything I've ever written, the first draft's out really fast. It comes out in 3 to 4 weeks. And then I've got my blueprint. And then I step away from it for a week or so, and I come back and I read it and I make notes and I cross out scenes and I tweak up dialogue, and I spend more time probably on the second pass than I do on the first pass. But for me, it's just about getting a structure down. And then once I have that structure down, and a lot of the best twists and surprises that I've ever come up with, they come for some organic place in the writing. If you're going to use outline or 3x5 cards, and that's going to be your blueprint, and you're going to stick to that, I think you're limiting yourself. You're not leaving yourself an avenue to discover the possibilities. Characters will always lead you if they're speaking to you, and they're going to lead you somewhere else that you didn't envision going.
Mm-hmm. So once you have a script, it sounds like you do the first draft, takes about a month, and then a month or two for the second draft. Once you have a draft that you feel, reasonably confident, what does your development process look like? I mean, in this case, it sounds like you were working with Kiefer Sutherland on the script. Do you send it to him, get notes? Do you have other writers you send it to? Do you send it to your agent or manager? What does that development process look like with you?
Well, yeah, of course I send it to my agent and manager. I have a select group of friends who I send my scripts to that are going to read it that are no BS. They're going to tell me what they think. They're not impressed that I wrote a script. So they have no problem telling me, I think this sucks, or I love it, but this is a problem for me. And so I take all that into consideration. And, obviously, like on Forsaken, Kiefer's involved, so Kiefer reads it, and Kiefer has his notes, and then you go after raising the money, and then Donald has his notes, of course, and then when Demi Moore came in, I spent time with Demi Moore, and she had notes. All actors are going to have notes. Then the director's going to have notes.
Yeah. Maybe you can give us a little advice. When you're involved in a project like this and someone has a note that you just think is ridiculously bad, how do you approach that? How do you kind of maybe circumvent it, or how do you maybe even have to go and write some pages that you don't think are necessarily quite right?
Without naming names, I think Forsaken, I don't know. I actually have lost track now, but I think Forsaken is my 18th produced film. Mm-hmm. And I've worked with some people, and I'm talking to you about, obviously if I'm directing the movie, I have a lot more say, because if they don't want to listen to me as the writer, they're going to listen to me as the director. But, when there's a reason why a lot of directors don't like the writers on the script, because a lot of writers aren't just going to sit there quietly and have their script changed in ways that fundamentally change the story, or nobody knows the story better than the writer. So there's been times where I've been on the set where I've watched the blocking of a thing, and a director has said, yeah, forget about that part. Don't say that part. And I've gone to the director, and the director has said, no, that's just the way I want it. And so right before the take, I'll sort of walk up to the actor, and I'll say, boy, I think you're really missing an opportunity here. And then the actor goes to the director, and the director said, and then they have their conversation. A lot of times the actor will win, and you get the line back in. But you have to realize that this is a business built on collaboration. And if you want to be an artist, then you got to go be a novelist, or go be a painter or a sculptor. Do something that's, one person is complete control over, because you're never going to have that as a screenwriter. And you've really got to learn we as writers, we're the only ones who start with nothing. Everybody else works off a template that you've created. And sometimes we get our words are a little too precious, and we hold on to things. And you really have to learn when to pick your battles on the set, or what you want to keep in. You've got to give stuff away and really be able to fight for the stuff you want to keep. Because sometimes you're going to get a director or an actor that's going to come in, and they're just, I've had actors, and I'm not going to say who, that when I meet them for the first time, it's not even a discussion. They're there with a big red marker, and they're Xing out chunks of my script right in front of me. Mm-hmm. And, I understand when you're a first-time writer, you're so happy to be having anything made, you don't know what to say. But I also believe, too, that if you don't put the brakes on that right away in any way you can, they're going to ride roughshod over you for the rest of the production. So you have to find a way to stand up. That's what I go into. If the actor is doing that, you have to go talk to the director. If the director is talking about that, you have to go talk to the actor. It's not because you're trying to win. It's because, you put that in your script for a reason. Now, if they want to cut, if an actor comes to you and the line is, hey, you want to do something tonight? And the actor says, hey, what's up? Let's hang out tonight. Is that okay? Whatever it is. And they want to paraphrase it like that. That's not worth fighting about. But when scenes are getting chopped out, first of all, I don't think it's an actor's job ever to decide what scene stays in the movie. I mean, you should be there talking to the writer about what your character is, what your character's saying or not saying. That's valid. No, a director, he can come to you and say, I don't think we need this scene in the movie. And that's a valid thing. But I don't think actors should be doing that.
Yeah. So once you had Forsaken, you had a script that you guys like. Kiefer Sutherland is involved. Can you talk a little bit about the process of getting that script out there and raising the money to actually make the movie?
Yeah, Forsaken was a weird one in that, there was a Canadian company that was involved, and they went out and we made offers to the other actors, and we were all up there. And it's no secret that during the filming, the movie ran out of money, and so the Kiefer had to put up a substantial amount of money to finish the film. Since then, that's all been taken care of. But normally what happens is that you find a financer, they put up the money. You pick a start date and you start filming. It's different than, years ago when I started, it used to be that you would go to the film markets, AFM and, Berlin, and you would sell movies, you would sell off territories, and you would get MGs, minimum guarantees for each territory, and that was like money in the bank, and you would use that to create the budget of your movie, the finance your movie. And that model has changed so much now. It's really difficult to finance movies that way now.
Yeah. So how can people see Forsaken? Do you know the release schedule? Is it going to be available on video on demand?
It's released February 19th. It's going to be released in theaters and then VOD.
Okay, perfect. And I always like to wrap up the interviews just by asking the guest if they wouldn't mind sharing, any contact information they feel comfortable sharing, their Twitter handle, Facebook page, blog, and I can round that stuff up just in case someone wants to.
I've got a Twitter I've got a Twitter page at Brad Mirman.
Okay.
And perfect. I've also got. There's one thing I do want to talk about since it's the public forum. Have you got a minute?
Yeah, sure. I'm all ears.
I'm actually, the next thing I'm going to write is I've been a big scuba diver for a long time, and I'm going to actually be doing something, a documentary about, I've created a charity called the Disabled Soldiers Scuba Fund, and we raise money to take disabled veterans to warm water locations and dive. So if anybody wants to take a look at it, can I give it a plug?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I'll link to it in the show notes too. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's the website is DS Scuba, so it's two S's, dsScubaFund.org, and I just want to get the word out there because I really think it's a worthwhile cause.
Yeah. No, that sounds great.
And anybody who wants to contact me, I have a Twitter account at Brad Mirman, and then Brad Mirman on Facebook.
Brad Mirman on Facebook too. Perfect. As I said, I will round all that stuff up and I will put in the show notes so people can just go to the show notes and click right over to it. Well, Brad, thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Lots of great information.
Okay, thank you. I enjoyed it. It was a great time.
Thank you. We'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Just want to mention two things I'm doing at Selling Your Screenplay to help screenwriters find producers who are looking for material. First, I've created a monthly newsletter that will be sent directly to producers. Every member of SYS Select can submit one logline per newsletter. I went and emailed my large database of producers and asked them if they would like to receive this monthly newsletter of pitches. So far, I have well over 200 producers who have signed up to receive this. These producers are hungry for material and happy to read scripts from new writers. Again, these are producers who I've contacted and said, listen, do you want to receive this monthly newsletter of log lines from writers? So these are producers, real producers with credits who have expressed an interest. They want to read log lines. They want to read material. It's not just a cold email or anything like that. So I'm slowly building this list up. I think when I started, I had about 100, 150. And now over the last 6 months, I've built it up to 200. So I continuously am trying to get new producers onto this list. And producers are requesting scripts. That was I sent out the one just a couple days ago and got some feedback from producers that they were definitely looking at this and requesting scripts off it. So again, it's just another quick, easy way if you join SYS Select to get your log lines into the hands of producers. To learn more about this, you can go to www.sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. And then there's just like a little section on all the SYS Select services, and one of them is newsletter. So that's exactly what I'm talking about here. And secondly, I've partnered with one of the premier paid screenwriting leads sites so I can syndicate their leads to SYS Select members. There are lots of great paid screenwriting leads coming in each week from our partner. Recently, I've been getting 10 to 12 high-quality paid leads per week. These are producers and production companies who are actively looking to buy material or are looking to hire a screenwriter for a specific project. If you sign up for SYS Select, you'll get these leads emailed directly to you several times per week. These leads run the gamut from production companies looking for a specific type of spec script to producers looking to hire a screenwriter to write up one of their own ideas, or perhaps a production company looking for a screenwriter to turn a novel into a script, something that they've maybe optioned, some other literary material or some other idea that they have, and they need a writer to write it up. These producers are sometimes they're looking for shorts, feature films. Producers are looking for TV pilots, web series pilots. It's really a whole huge array of different types of projects that these producers are looking for. And these leads are exclusive to our partner, obviously, and also to SYS Select members. So there's really no other way to get these leads. To sign up, go to, again, sellingyourscreenplayselect.com. Also, I just want to mention I recently set up a success stories page for people who have had success through the various SYS Select services. So you can go to that. It's sellingyourscreenplay.com/success. So if you want to check out some of the what other people have said about the SYS services, do check out that page. Also, if you've had some success with SYS Select services, please do email me. I'd love to hear your story. They're very inspiring. Perhaps you'd want to give me a little blurb for the success page, or perhaps even come on the podcast and talk about that. Over the years, I have had a few people on the podcast come and share their success stories. So that's inspiring, and it's a great way to give back to the community. Just hearing people's stories is inspiring to me and potentially all the listeners of this podcast. So next week, just want to talk quickly. Next week, I'm going to be interviewing screenwriter and director Augustine. He just goes by a first name. His name is just Augustine. And he started his career. He's got a great story. I think everybody listening to this podcast can kind of relate to his story. He started his career I guess, in theater, but then he realized, hey, I can make movies. And so he wrote a screenplay and directed his first feature film. And he talks about this very openly on the podcast. He spent, less than $5,000 doing this feature film, and he actually sold it. It's actually available on Netflix, so you can check it out. And he talks through the whole process of, how he got this movie made. And in some of the scenes, it didn't even sound like he had a cinematographer. He just, hit the record button on the video camera camera, and then ran in there because he was acting it as well. He wrote it, directed, and also acted in it, produced it, and acted in it, which is what you got to do when you're doing a $5,000 feature. So he goes through this whole process, and he sold the film and actually made some money off it, and that has slowly, now he's about 7 feature films into his career, and he's talking about the reason he's on the podcast is to promote his most recent film, which is called Badge of Honor, and it actually stars Martin Sheen. So he started off, very humble beginnings, just shooting stuff himself and editing himself, producing it himself, and slowly has built a career where now he is directing a feature film with Martin Sheen. So it's a great story. He's really very open about it too. So it's a great progression, and he really goes through all of those various steps on his career. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things that Brad said during the interview. One of the things interesting, he basically said he broke in through just living and growing up in LA, knowing a lot of people. And I think that's a really important thing to really understand. I get the question quite often, do I really have to move to LA? Is it really that important? Can I submit my scripts from anywhere? And, you can do these online services. My own email and fax blast, the SYS Select email and fax blast. Obviously, you can live anywhere in the world. Inktip, the Blacklist. There's a whole bunch of these services, and they are location independent. They don't, where you actually live has very little relevance on your ability to use these products and services. But I think what you really should listen to is a story like Brad, and you can definitely succeed if you're not in LA, but it's going to make your life easier if you are in LA. I mentioned earlier in this podcast, the writers group. It's like, this is a pretty good writers group. A lot of the people in the group have produced credits. They have networks of people. So when you start to meet these other writers in this group, you also start to meet some of the people that they know, and we're able to get, professional actors in, come in and read our pages. So there's a lot of sort of just ripple effect of being in LA, because everybody is here. There's so many people here trying to break in, or people that have already broken in and are just working on their craft, and you can kind of piggyback on their success and get to know those people and ride that. So again, I really think about this. Yes, you can succeed. Whenever anybody asks me that question, can I succeed from LA? Yes, you can succeed, but it's going to be a whole lot easier just being in LA and getting to know other people who are also, having some success, and talking to them and becoming friends with them. There's just so many benefits to that. So keep that in mind. I think it's interesting that Brad, he didn't really work in the industry. It doesn't sound like but he did live here, and he knew a lot of people and was able to that was enough. Just knowing a few people and passing his scripts out was enough to get his career going. I thought it was also an interesting little note. He mentioned that, he was doing stand-up comedy. He was hanging out at the Improv with other screenwriters, comedians, and, they would write a script and then send it out, and then they would wait for the rejections or just wait for some feedback. And, he said, no, I just went and wrote it. And by the time they got the rejection letter for their, first script, I had already written my second script. And I think that's so important. Again, I get a lot of emails from people asking me, hey, I sent my script to this production company, 2 months ago, and they never responded. What's going on? What should I do? And it's like, you shouldn't be spending that much time worrying about where you submitted your script. Submit it. And there is probably some, you should follow up. I don't want to say you should never follow up. I frankly don't ever follow up. I send my script out and I literally just forget about it. If they ever get back to me, they should. Now, I think I probably am doing that wrong. I do think I've talked to some other writers and I've seen that there is some success in actually being able to follow up and kind of, once you've sent your script, a month later follow up. But don't spend too much time worrying about it. In most cases, you're going to submit your script in anything, whether it be through Inktip, whether it be through my own email and fax blast, whether it be through the Blacklist. If someone finds your script in the Blacklist and requests it, most of the time, like 90% of the time, 80% of the time, you're never going to hear anything one way or another. They're just never going to respond to you again. So you don't want to be sitting around waiting. You'll be waiting for the rest of your life because most of these people are never going to respond. Keep writing. And I think that's so important what Brad said. In that interim time while other people are waiting to get feedback on their script, you could have written a whole nother script and then you've got 2 scripts. And, your chances of success go up with each project that you have. have that you can submit. If you've got 2 scripts, your chances are twice as good if you only have 1 script. If you've got 10 scripts that are halfway decent and you're submitting 10 scripts around town, your chances of actually selling one of those scripts is 10x. It's 10 times as good as just having 1 script. So do keep that in mind. Again, I don't want to overemphasize, quantity over quality. The scripts do have to be at a certain level, so you can't just knock out garbage. I mean, having 10 scripts that's complete garbage is not worth 1 script that's really, really good. So there is a balance, but I find a lot of writers are probably too far on the perfectionist side, and they spend far too much time on one project. And a lot of the people that I interview on the podcast, a lot of the people that I talk to who are having some success, they are much more on the side of quantity over quality. They're pumping out a lot of scripts, and I think that's something to really think about. And as I said, Brad pretty much summed it up with his little story. I also think it was interesting. He talks about, I asked him about, did you get an agent? And his response was, having a body of work. And I think that's so important to remember too. As a screenwriter, people are so afraid too. A lot of new writers are afraid, someone's going to steal my idea. It's like, first off, no one's going to steal your idea. Second off, who cares if they do? A screenwriting career is not one script, not one great script. It's a collection of, dozens of screenplays. And so you've got to start looking at it like that as a body of work. And just in a very practical sense, what that means is exactly what Brad was talking about. How do you get an agent? Well, you need a body of work to get an agent. An agent is probably not going to be that interested in you if you have one really good script. They want to see that you've written many. And again, in sort of a practical sense, I can relate my own situation. Over the years, I've submitted to hundreds, if not thousands, probably tens of thousands of query letters to agents and managers over the years. And, most of those, like 80%, 90%, you never hear anything one way or another. You get a few out of those submissions. You do get a few people requesting scripts. And then out of those people that request scripts, you get an even fewer number of people, of agents and managers that actually like your script and call you back after reading something you read. And in every single case, I've probably been at this stage where I've submitted something, they've requested a script, they've liked the script. Over the course of my career, I've probably been at that stage maybe 12 times, let's say 10, 12, 14. I don't remember exactly, but numerous times I've been at that stage where they've read a script that they like and they call me. And the thing that they always say, I don't remember a single instance where this did not occur. Every single time when they read that script and they like it, they will email you, call you, and they'll say, what other stuff do you have? What other material do you have? Can I read something else that you've read? And then that's the real make or break. In some cases, I've sent them other scripts and they've liked it, and I have signed with an agent or a manager. In some cases, I've sent them some other scripts and I never heard from them again, or I heard back that it wasn't quite for them. So keep that really in mind. If your objective is to get an agent, you've really got to have 2, probably even 3 or 4 or 5 scripts, because probably some of them are not going to be that great. But if you've only written 1 or 2 scripts in your entire life, I don't think it's quite time for an agent or manager. You've got to build up a body of work. The agents are looking, and the managers are looking to build a relationship with talented writers who can consistently produce at a high level. And if you only have 1 script, I mean, if it was just absolutely fantastic, maybe they would take it on just on the sense they think this is just so awesome. But you probably don't have that script, so keep that in mind. It's a that's like a 1 in a billion type of a thing. So I don't like to talk in absolute. So yes, there probably are people that only had 1 script. They signed with an agent that got them meetings because the script was so awesome. So it probably has happened. But again, in my own experience, the dozen or so times where I've kind of got to the point where the agents read something and liked something of mine, every single time they've asked for more material. They want to see what else you have. So keep that in mind. I get a lot of people. I do have an email and fax blast through my service, and I get people coming, should I do the producer's blast? Should I do the email and fax blast? In almost every instance, I recommend the producer's blast, because if you only have 1 script, there is a chance that you will find a producer that just is passionate about that project and may see it through, may go and try and make it. And they're not as worried. I mean, as a producer, you kind of figure you're going to work with a lot of different writers. And if this writer can never write another good script, it's not that big of a deal to a producer, as long as they like the 1 script that you have, that they've read and they like. So keep that in mind as you're going about, marketing your own material. If you only have a couple of scripts, you probably need to keep writing and get to the point where you have a nice body of work so that you can show an agent a lot of high quality material. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.